I think about it day and night. I feel like a king, oh yeah. And baby, can't help but stare. Such a rush, baby. Oh, when you touch me, baby. Such a rush, baby.
You're listening to Viva ENT Radio. Coming up on the show today, Beatles talk, Elvis talk, so much more. We're going to get started with a classic interview from the show back in 2015. We talked to Bob Merlis.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Viva ENT. We're live on the radio here in Seattle/Bellevue. I'm in the studio with my co-host, Mr.
Brad Buckles.
And my excellent producer,
Eric C.C. Ryder.
Eric C.C. Ryder. I have rock historian Jerry Osborne on the show today. Jerry?
I am here. I am ready for another exciting event.
You know what? All we have is exciting events here on Viva ENT.
Yeah, we've had some great guests lately, I'll tell you that.
And you know
Amen.
what? And thanks to you, Jerry, we have another great guest today, Bob Merlis. Say hi, Bob.
Hello, how's it going out there?
I'm doing good. Now, are you you're in New Orleans? Are you on the road? Are you driving? Or
No, I'm sitting in a hotel lobby.
Cool.
Having polished off a half a dozen oysters just now.
That's what I like.
And,
That's what I like.
Right. And I'm here for the Ponderosa Stomp, a Roots Music Festival with lots of great first-generation rock artists.
Excellent and marvelous. You know, I know that you've been associated with Jerry. How long have you guys known each other?
Well, I'm going to answer
What do you
that by
think, Jerry?
saying for too many years to count. It's been a long time since we've started communicating, and I'll tell you, he's one of the best in the business at what he does, which is publicity.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Now you can cash that check, Jerry.
And I wanted to mention that Bob is essentially a West Coast guy. He's just on the road right now.
Oh, well, great.
Yeah, I'm just doing the job here in New Orleans.
Now, my co-host Brad Buckles here, he is a little too young to remember the Atlanta Pop Festival, but I'm sure you heard about it, right,
I
Brad?
definitely have heard about it. I've
Okay.
been reading up on it. I'm intrigued to talk with you.
Yeah. So, Bob, tell us what's going on with the Showtime. I know it aired about 3 weeks ago, but
Yeah, well, Showtime aired the film Jimi Hendrix Electric Church, which chronicles Hendrix's performance and the context of that performance at the Atlanta Pop Festival.
I'm getting it.
The second Atlanta Pop Festival, there was one in '69, and this one was in 1970. It was on July 4th, 1970.
Wow.
And it was the biggest pop festival ever in North America. It's estimated that as many as 500,000 people were there.
Uh-huh.
And it followed Woodstock. And
Correct.
In fact, Woodstock may have generated more interest in Atlanta than it might have otherwise have had, because the Woodstock movie came out that year.
Right.
And everybody saw that and said, I gotta do something like that.
Right.
And the next thing like that was the Atlanta Pop Festival.
Yeah, I remember it very well. I'm old enough to remember it vividly. And, I remember that on the Grand Funk album, live album, it had said that they had a nice clipping about the Atlanta Pop Festival, and that's the first time I heard about it, actually. And
yeah, I think that was their, big stage debut, actually.
Exactly. I think that's what
I ran into Mark Farner about a year ago and brought that up, and he told me, he was there, he watched Hendrix, he was really into it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if their first album, Grand Funk Live, was actually recorded entirely at the Atlanta Pop Festival. I'm starting to...
I don't know. I know that then CBS Records had a mobile unit down there, and they recorded a lot of the acts and did put out an Atlanta pop album that had, one song from each of 10, 12 different artists, including Hendrix.
Wow. So you just had the special on Showtime, and now...
Well, it's a film that's more than a concert film. It's a documentary with concert footage. It's called Jimi Hendrix Experience Electric Church. at Atlanta Pop Festival.
Very cool.
And
Very
it's
cool.
coming out at the end of this month, this October, on DVD and Blu-ray in an expanded version. They'll have 3 more performances than you would have seen if you'd seen it on Showtime.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
That's really cool.
What's the history on this video? It seems like this should have come up a lot earlier than it did, so something must have kept it hidden.
Well, the filmmaker, Steve Rash, shot the Atlanta Pop Festival. He was a real pioneer in music video and music on television. He shot it, but he could never figure out a way to get it released. I mean, he shot everything, more than just Hendrix, because it was felt that, well, the Woodstock film addressed that. And, it was kind of too much, too late. So he kind of just kept it around for a long, long time. So what's happened now is the footage of Hendrix has been utilized in this film, and he has other footage, and he's hopeful that he'll chronicle the entire pop festival in some way in a feature film.
Well, we're Jimi Hendrix's home right here in Seattle.
So I've got a question for you. This is Brad, and I don't know if this is better towards Bob or Jerry, but for those of us who weren't around back then, what was the difference between the Atlanta Pop Festival and Woodstock that we hear so much about?
I'll tell you the biggest difference is Woodstock was next to a media center. Atlanta Pop Festival was in a little town of Byron, Georgia, which was 120 miles from Atlanta, which at that time was not a media center.
Out in the middle of nowhere?
There was no Ted Turner then.
No Ted. Well, there was a Ted Turner, but he wasn't.
There was no
a
cable.
national media figure.
Right.
So it was kind of, even though 500,000 people were there, it kind of was under the radar to some extent. But it's funny, after I sent out word through press releases, etc., that there was both the album, which is called Freedom. It's all of the Hendrix performance at Atlanta Pop, and the DVD and Blu-ray Electric Church. Many, many people, I mean, significant numbers said, I was there. And the reason they were there is they saw that Woodstock movie and said, I got to do this. I have to have this, no pun, experience. And it motivated people from all over the country to go down to Byron, Georgia, and go to that festival.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about because I watched the Woodstock movie. I thought it was really cool. And then, that was all those big concerts at the time and all this type of movement and the way that rock and roll was changing from pop music into a heavier type role as far as being heavier with the sound and the lead guitars and all that thing. The pop festival, with the introduction of an explosion of hard rock and roll on the scene, it was really something different. It was, I would say that it was kind of the beginning of the way that music was going to change as far as rock and roll goes up until that date. What do you think?
I think that's absolutely true. And the idea of going to a massive rock festival was kind of a rite of passage for kids of a certain age, teenagers and people in their early 20s. They had to avail themselves of that because, sooner or later you're going to grow up or get drafted. Yeah. At that time, the draft, Vietnam was in full bloom, and people thought this could be their last hurrah.
Yeah, I was part of that. I got a number.
Now, this basically was the beginning of rock festivals as we know it, right? I mean, you have Woodstock, you have Atlanta.
Atlanta was the end. Atlanta was the last big monumental outdoor rock festival in the United States.
What about that rock festival that the Stones got in trouble with down in California?
Altamont.
Yeah, what was that?
Altamont was prior to that. Altamont was in '69.
Okay,
I was there.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
okay.
Man,
I went to
there's
Altamont.
a survivor right there.
Yeah, see, Jerry Osborne, he's the guy. Yeah.
I was there. I went there. on a motorcycle with a friend on the back, and we just had a great time. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones.
As opposed to Altamont, there were, as far as anybody knows, there were no lives lost at Atlanta Pop, and there was minimal arrests. Of course, the town had a police force of 1 or 2 people, so it wasn't really possible.
Kept them busy.
I think by the time the Atlanta Pop Festival came along, people had a little experience of going to these type of events, and realizing, hey, you gotta be cool a little bit.
I think people were, generally speaking, and they left a pile of trash and all that stuff, but they just overwhelmed the facility. There were just many, many, many more people than were anticipated. So, but they made the best of it, and people had typically had a positive experience. Certainly, all the people that I know today who were there then.
Yeah.
So looking
who
back
were all
on
keenly interested in seeing if they could find themselves in the crowd in the film.
Good luck.
But the reality is that the Hendrix performance, the crowd is not lit. The stage is lit and lit quite well, actually, but the crowd is not lit. So he's facing just basic blackness, but he knows there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people there, and you see him interact with the crowd in the film, and he complains about, I can't see you.
That's
So
funny.
did these performers have any idea how large this crowd was?
No, there's no way they could have known, because it was further than the eye could see, especially at night. They weren't lit.
Yeah,
I mean, they did. There is a aspect of it where, it was kind of the origin of that whole, strike a match or light a lighter, and it, went out for, a half a mile or even a mile. It was just, flickering lights.
So looking back on it, Bob, what would you say is one of the more original parts of your particular festival?
That festival, they coordinated the playing of the Star. Remember, it was the 4th of July, so they played the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh yeah.
The Jimi Hendrix Experience played the Star Spangled Banner, and they set off fireworks that were actually in time to the music. It was pretty phenomenal that they pulled that off, because it was chaos. They didn't have any, significant communication from the stage to production, the production office, and so on. But they did it by the seat of their pants, and they pulled it off, and it was quite remarkable.
That is.
I do recall that the promoters had no idea how big that crowd was going to be, and they weren't geared up in any way, shape, or form to handle the amount of people that were there. And if I'm right in my memory, there was a point where they were so overwhelmed with people coming in that they just gave up on even charging or having tickets or whatever, and just let it fly.
Yeah, that's what happened. It was just, the interstate was backed up for miles and miles and miles, and it was just a great act of improvisation. And oh, by the way, it was 104 degrees that night, that day.
In Atlanta.
So this goes on for 3 days,
the fact
right?
that there weren't any deaths is remarkable.
So this goes on for 3 days like this, just more and more people, heat, great time, great music.
Oh yeah, but Hendrix was the apogee of the whole thing.
Of
he was
course.
He was the biggest star in the world, and the biggest, the highest paid concert attraction. The money doesn't sound like a lot today. It's about $100,000, but it's huge. And came in by helicopter. Helicopter landed at night.
Cool.
So many possibilities for disaster, and all of them were averted.
Very good. So you got some great footage of Jimi Hendrix at the Atlanta Pop Festival with this selection that you have on the market now, correct, sir?
Oh, yeah. What's available now is the 2 CD and 2 LP set, Freedom, Jimi Hendrix Experience at the Atlanta Pop Festival.
Cool.
And then on the 28th of this month, the DVD and Blu-ray version of the film Electric Church will be available, and that's something that I urge everybody, obviously, to see, and to see it in an uninterrupted way, if at all possible. I know everybody's got a very limited attention span these days, and, just don't check your email or see what anybody said on Facebook. Watch it all the way through on the biggest possible screen with the music turned up as loud as possible.
That's the way I like it.
And by the way, Bob, I applaud whoever's idea it was to have this out on vinyl, too, because, I'm a vinyl guy.
Oh, yeah. It's great on vinyl. It's Jerry, you appreciate this more than almost anybody. The fact is that Eddie Kramer mixed it from the original. It was recorded on 8 tracks by this mobile unit I told you that CBS had sent down.
Uh-huh.
And so Eddie had the original tapes, so they were very pristine, actually. But he mixed it in a really simpatico way, and who better to do it than the guy who engineered all the original Jimi Hendrix Experience albums and was in the booth at Woodstock.
Wow.
How fortunate.
And he's still with us and still working on Hendrix records today. We showed it to him. He mixed the album without having seen the film. He saw the film, and he actually was brought to tears by it.
Wow, incredible. That's a great story, man.
Oh, yeah.
So, listen, Bob, it's been great having you on the show today.
Happy to be here.
Well,
anything for Jerry, of course.
Of course. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and tell our listeners how they can get familiar with what you got going on out there right now.
Well, the best way is to go to JimiHendrix.com.
Okay, cool.
Couldn't be simpler, could it? And if you're interested in getting the DVD or Blu-ray, you can pre-order it on Amazon. Is a good way to do it. All the major retailers will have it. And the that's Electric Church. The Freedom CD and companion vinyl LPs are out now, so go get them and listen. Turn it up.
Actually, I just looked it up on iTunes. It looks like you've got the album.
Again, it's available digitally as well, of course.
Yep.
Very cool.
And I sent you the link, Johnny, on the Amazon.
I did. I
page.
checked it out, too. It's really great.
Good. Okay.
Okay, so, Bob, thanks for being on the show. Jerry, stay on the line if you can.
Okay.
All right.
Bob, thanks again for joining us on such short notice.
Yes,
Oh,
Bob,
you know.
thank you. The
What
greatest.
an honor.
We will jump through any hoops. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bob.
Take care.
Cool cat. Ladies and gentlemen, guys and dolls, cats and chicks, you're listening to Viva ENT. This is Johnny the Capo. I'm in the studio with my producer, Mr.
Hey, it's Eric C.C. Ryder. Just enjoying that great interview with legendary rock and roll promoter Bob Merlis.
Wasn't that something?
Very cool.
You know, that was like one of the biggest highlights of all the shows that we've done because that was such a big thing, back in the day.
He worked with so many of the greats, like Jimi Hendrix, for
Oh, my
instance.
gosh.
Yeah.
And one of the favorites one of my favorites that he worked with was Grand Funk.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big Grand Funk fan.
We're
man.
an American band. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Classic, too.
pre-American band. They were
Yeah.
more into a little heavier rock type thing at the time. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest today. Her name is Karen Zamm. And Karen, say hi to our listeners.
Hey, it's KZ.
I like KZ. KZ, tell our listeners about you, KZ, and all the stuff that you do.
Oh, okay. Well, one of the things that I do is I work with a number of music acts and venues across the greater Seattle area, just promoting local music, and that takes form in a lot of different ways. One of which now we have the opportunity to work together. Do we want to start off with that?
We can. We can start. We actually, if you like, or anything you like to do.
Okay, awesome. Well, I operate under KZ Music Media, and one of the things that I do is I promote the weekly music event called Mojam Mondays that happens at Nectar Lounge in Fremont, Seattle.
Cool.
And we just celebrated our 5th year, and this week was our 268th episode. And what Mojam Mondays is a community gathering spot for musicians.
And it's on Mondays, right?
Yes, and
Cool.
the jam is completely free-form, improvised, organically created music. So
Wow.
basically we put bands of strangers together on stage, and somebody picks a groove, and off they go, and they make up a completely original song, no calling covers, and they get to the end of the song, and the stage is cleared, and a whole new band of strangers comes up. So you just never know what you're going to get, and it's really important to the music community. It's where folks find each other. It supports other creative arts like poets and spoken word and visual artists. We've had live painters and sketch artists there, comedians. It's a hub, and so I think every musician, no matter what level or age group, it's all inclusive, and the beauty of it is that you're mixing everybody together.
Sounds like a premier open mic / great entertainment show.
Absolutely. So it's a great place for musicians, but of course, half of the building is filled with audience members who just really appreciate the surprise of the thing, because you just most of the time can't believe that this wasn't a band that, pre-wrote and pre-rehearsed the music that they just created.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's you've been doing that for like years now, and
Yep.
So if a particular musician wants to come in to perform, that's new on the scene, is it like a waiting list, or how does it work?
Well, we have a complete back line set up. We have a house bass, we have drums, we have keys,
Mm-hmm.
and you just talk to Mo of Mojam Mondays, who started this thing 4.5 years ago.
Very cool.
Or Jambassador Davey Nepos, and literally we have a large whiteboard where we list out vocalists, horn players, and we get a full 9 to 12 people on stage each jam, depending on how many horn player or other accessory players we have. Congas up on the stage, and folks bring their their mouth harps or their whatever extra instruments that they want to bring, and you just sign up. Pretty much, you just show up and you get put together with a band of strangers, and there you go.
It sounds like loads of fun.
For sure.
While I say that is because it sounds spontaneous. It sounds like you have all these people there with this great energy and vibe that are just interested in seeing what's going on.
Absolutely, and it attracts traveling musicians, and we actually just passed the year anniversary of when Grammy-winning jazz fusion artist Robert Glasper came and hung out at a Mojam Mondays with us.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
How cool is
Yeah,
that?
he said it felt very warm and inviting and like family, and that's really the environment that we go for. And interestingly enough, I'm actually now a radio show host as well, because we broadcast Mojam Mondays live every other Monday, 10 to 11 p.m. PST on community radio station Rainier Avenue Radio.world, which is internet-based, but we also stream the video through Facebook, so people can check it out even if they're not in the vicinity.
I've heard about it. Yeah, I've heard about it, and it sounds like a happening thing for sure.
Well, hopefully we'll get you to come out and jam with us sometime.
Well, I would love to come out and jam with you sometime. I have originals, and I have a unique style for sure, if I say so myself. But it sounds like a good, exciting, fresh time to just come out and have some fun.
Absolutely.
And I suppose that's what it's all about, right?
That is what it's all about, but it is a community builder, and actually there are, we say that it's almost like we have a graduating class, because the folks who came in the first year or two found bands at Mojam Mondays and created albums, and now are on to their second albums and tours, and you can see them at larger venues and at the summer concerts in downtown Seattle and the waterfront. So, it's really been a breeding ground for the music scene here. That's part of it, is that you'll see, come check it out, because you're going to see people become stars out of this thing.
You're right about that, because look at all the stars that have came out of this area. Really. In the last 25, 30 years, all the major acts that have emerged onto the national scene. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
I'm from Vegas, so I had the great opportunity and experience to live in Las Vegas all my life until about 20 years ago. And Vegas is a little bit different, because they are into a lot of acts that were popular, maybe 5 or 10 years previously, and then Seattle was kind of like what was going on now, at that particular time. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Right. Well, there's I've heard the philosophy that because Seattle is so separated from the rest of the country, even to tour regionally, you need to drive across a state to do it.
Uh-huh.
There's a couple hot spots within the state of Washington that a regionally touring band will go to, but other than that, they have to go to Idaho, they have to go to Portland, they have to go down the coast.
Yeah.
And because of that, isolation, it's created brand new genres, because folks here are intermingling genres and making up new kinds of music, because the creativity is being bred here rather than being influenced by what's mainstream.
Right. The mainstream thing is cool, but there's always the other influences, just like you're talking about, that come in, take the grip, and all of a sudden they're mainstream. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think Seattle has a flair for creating its own unique sound, taking something that already exists and fusing it with something else. And I think that the next resurgence is right upon us. There's just so much great music being made here. It's just the industry is a little challenging right now as far as who's being marketed on the mainstream. So that's where you and I and other independent media folks can try to make an impact and share this talent, because it needs to be heard and seen.
And, Karen, I know for a fact that you are very instrumental in making that type of thing happen.
Oh, well, thank you. It's all drops in the bucket. We're all doing what we can.
Yeah, but, you're right, though. Everything that you say is right. It's the new energy. It's this and that. What do you think about the way the recording industry has changed, like as far as artists getting royalties and Spotify and Rhapsody and all the music services where, the artists don't really get money like they used to for their songs and their recordings? What say you?
I say that it's a major issue. And
I think so, too.
It's causing a lot of upheaval, and I mean, to quote the man himself, Quincy Jones is the one who said the music industry is dead.
It's kind of heartbreaking and kind of true. I mean, think about it. Artists back in the day, 60s, 70s, whatever decade, when they recorded music and they had an album out, they made money. And nowadays it seems like it's quite the opposite. So now
well, artists are definitely being devalued.
Right. And I don't understand why that is such. So now artists, big names, artists that can demand an audience, and sell out arenas, so on and so forth. They make money off the concert ticket sales. So concert ticket sales are way up there, like never before. And then the particular artist is not making the garnering the revenue that they should from their recordings. It's just kind of weird to me.
Right. Well, I'm not an expert on the topic, but what I do know is that the label deal as it used to exist I don't know that it exists anymore, and if it does, it's extremely rare. Most bands who are signed with an agency then still have to pay for their own promotion, still have to pay for their own production, or they may have a label that is willing to help them with production, but then they have to, pay for the booking and the other aspects of it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more challenging work-wise for the emerging band. And Spotify and Pandora are great for discovering new artists, but I think we really need to have the general public realize is that there won't be any new music to listen to if the artists aren't supported. So instead of just playing on Spotify, how about follow their links and purchase their music?
Interesting concept. It just kind of baffles me and blows my mind. Eric, my producer here, he's been in radio a long time. Eric, come in on that subject and let us know what you think.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. Artists just aren't getting from their music, their recordings, what they used to. On the flip side, though, it seems like the live scene is bigger than it used to be. And people have found ways to monetize the live experience, whether it be merchandise, whether it be VIP meet and greets and stuff like that, that they used to not be really capable of doing or willing to do. But now, so artists are finding new ways to make up that income. On the other hand, if you're somebody like a Brian Wilson who was, in the studio making, slaving away for years trying to make one record as perfect as can be, that doesn't pay off the way it used to. So it's, there's a downside to it for sure.
Karen,
True. What I have to say is in Seattle, especially with the change in culture and who the population is, being very tech-oriented, there overall has been a decrease in attendance at live shows, partly because people find it more convenient to consume music through devices.
Interesting comment.
That's interesting. All the shows I go to seem to be more packed than ever, but granted, I'm not going to as many as I used to. So,
but I kind of see what you're saying, Karen. Really, I think you have a point there.
So all this comes back to support local music, to support the independent musician. They're out here investing in their careers and sharing their art. And if you appreciate it and they're local, buy a ticket, go see their show.
Yeah.
If they're not local or you just can't make it out, buy their music, spread the word, share on social media, say, this is a great band. All of those things are very appreciated.
And if you're just playing YouTube or Spotify or whatever, just know that your favorite artists probably aren't making a living off of that. So maybe buy their T-shirt, go to their show, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, buy a T-shirt
right.
for God's sakes. So here's what's going on. We have had a lot of great interviews here on Viva ENT, and one of my pals and buddies, Nino Tempo, who is going to be on the show next week live.
Fantastic. It'll be great to have him back.
Yeah, he's the guy that came up with the beat for that. What was the song? Be My Baby? Be My Bump, Bump, Bump. So Hal Blaine got the credit because he was the drummer.
Yeah.
But Nino actually came up with the idea in the studio. He'll be back.
And as you're fond of saying, introduced Cher to Sonny.
Nino did introduce
That's enough to, be a rock and roll legend for all time. After that, of course, he had his own great hits as well, like Deep Purple.
And another great friend of our show is Chris Montez. And he was on tour in 1963 as the opening act. Him and Tommy Rowe were the opening act for the Beatles. Now, we got the Beatles coming to... how many year anniversary is this for the Edgewater Hotel?
Oh, it's the 55th anniversary of the Beatles staying at the Edgewater this year.
It's a famous, famous story. I'm not even from Seattle, but I've heard that story even before I arrived. About them fishing out the windows and stuff like that. Tell us more.
Oh, yeah, that's an iconic picture.
Yeah.
Of them. It was their first trip to the U.S. They had just hit the Ed Sullivan show, and it was Beatlemania.
Yeah. I seen the Beatles in 1964 at the Las Vegas Convention Center. And I can't believe that the sound systems were so primitive back in those days, compared to the way it evolved over the years. But you have a big thing going on at the Edgewater in August, don't you?
Yes, I actually am kind of amazed that you went to a Beatles show in 1964 in Vegas and didn't get trampled.
I did.
Just now recovering.
You really couldn't hear the concert. There was so much screaming, and they were playing on a sound system that was probably okay for the day, but just couldn't compete with the screaming. The pandemonia, the screaming, and so on and so forth. But it was still one of the greatest shows and experiences I've ever been at.
As a concert goer, I got to say that's one trend that I'm glad that we no longer have, the constant screaming girls.
Yeah.
I like to hear the music.
Me too. So anyway, go ahead, Karen.
There was a Seattle journalist. I just did a little online search, and there was one Seattle journalist who was part of the Beatles entourage while they were here for a few days.
Uh-huh.
And he said that there was a moment when they were performing and they were at the Seattle Coliseum, which is now Key Arena,
Mm-hmm.
Where George looked over at him, unplugged his guitar, and pretended to play for a minute, and then plugged it back in and just kind of shrugged his shoulders like nobody could tell the difference anyway.
I know. And it's kind of a shame, but true.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Kind of a shame, but yeah, no more screaming hysterical girls. But in 1964, when they came to Seattle,
Uh-huh.
no hotels wanted to host them because they knew that it would be pandemonium.
Correct.
But the Edgewater said, "All right, come on, Beatles. Stay here. We're a really cool spot. We're brand new. We were just built for the what's that the World Fair?
The World's Fair.
Theater.
Yeah, Seattle Center and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was 1962, but they, that the whole Seattle Center thing was still a big thing many years after that.
Well, that's a major cultural center for arts as well now too.
Mm-hmm.
But the Edgewater knew that it was going to be crazy, so they, had to take some extra security precautions and actually wrapped the entire hotel in with a barbed wire fence to try to keep people out. And you know, there's a number of stories about things that people did to try to get to the Beatles while they were there. They tried taking boats, you know, they bribed the chef, you know, but they, even with the thousands of fans that followed them back to the hotel, they did not tear down the fence. So that was good, and they got to fish out the window. And from what I understand, at least once a week, somebody wants to stay in the Beatles' room.
Oh, no question about it. It's got to be, legendary. It is legendary for the most part.
So the anniversary, the exact date is August 21st. Their 55th, the 55th year anniversary.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. So the Edgewater is going to celebrate it the entire month of August.
Cool.
So there's live music there every Friday and Saturday, but during August, it's going to be all mid to late 60s bands.
Cool.
Including yours.
That's right, Johnny the Capo and the Bad Boys.
Very cool. Do you know the names, or can you give us any kind of sneak preview of some of the bands we'll be hearing?
Absolutely. The Spirographs will be bringing the best spy, pop, and surf hits of the 60s. And the Help Band, they are a British Invasion cover band.
Yikes.
Doing some Beatles numbers, no doubt, with a name like that.
There's going to be some in there, but they cover the whole British Invasion scene.
Cool.
But for the dates right around the 21st, we will be hearing the Fab Three, who cover all the Beatles repertoire, including as solo artists.
Excellent.
Yes, and then we also are sneaking in Stormrider, a Doors tribute band.
Very cool.
Yes.
Very cool. I love the Doors. No question about it.
Yes, so it's going to be a groovy good time down
like
at
a lot of
Edgewater. And it's never a cover. And, you know, you're right on the water. The weather will be gorgeous in August. Yeah.
What's the name of the lounge there, dear?
It's the 6-7 Restaurant.
6-7 Restaurant. And is the lounge out on the deck, or is it inside?
Well, technically the lounge is inside, but it has full wall windows over the water, and then there are patio seating. There's patio seating available as well, right on the water.
Very cool. Very cool. It sounds like a great time. I'm excited to be there. I'm going to have to pull out my British Invasion tunes, which I love.
Well, and your band will be bringing the whole Elvis Vegas realm.
That's correct. No question about it. I was there for the whole Elvis type thing, Vegas type thing. You know, in 1969, August, when Presley hit Vegas, and he was back on top with Suspicious Minds and In the Ghetto, Don't Cry Daddy, Kentucky Rain, and all those great hits of the era. Every entertainer, Karen, and you might want to think about this too, every entertainer in 1969, 70, 71, and right up to 72 was wearing that jumpsuit. From Mick Jagger to David Cassidy to Earth, Wind and Fire to even Michael Jackson and the Jacksons, all were wearing that jumpsuit that Elvis created from that day. So he was like, again,
and the Osmonds.
And the Osmonds, of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. So he was like, I remember one night I was listening to the Johnny Carson show, and Glenn Campbell was the featured guest that night. And Johnny asked, what do you think about Elvis's reinsurgent, his popularity? It's like he's back on top. And Glenn Campbell said, he said, I think Elvis is proud of himself because he's making good music, and he's back on top. So that was kind of a real cool thing in '69. So we're going to do that at the Edgewater too. We're going to feature a lot of the songs from the era.
You going to wear the jumpsuit?
Probably not, but something similar. I'll tell you what, I will be sequenced up.
All right.
But Karen, you said something about a wedding venue, and we've only got like 3 more minutes. So why don't you go ahead and plug all the stuff that you do?
Awesome. Well, you and I had met at a couple of wedding expos.
Correct.
Because I also work with a music service organization called Gigs for You that puts live music into the airport and into the park.
Correct.
And the summer concerts and weddings and private parties, et cetera. And so we met at a wedding expo, and it happens now also with my relationship with Rainier Avenue Radio.world that it really is providing a number of services to the community, including managing a large gallery space right on Rainier Avenue South.
Very cool.
In Columbia City, just a couple blocks down the road from the Royal Room. And it's open for community use. It's about 65 by 35 feet with huge cathedral ceilings, a roll-up door right to the sidewalk on Rainier Avenue South, an all-white venue. We've hosted film screenings there, dance parties, community meetings, and gospel dinners, and it would be just a gorgeous place for a wedding or a reception. So thank you for letting me plug that. You would just find out more by emailing rainieravenueradio.world at gmail.com. We're also listed on SpaceFinder.
We're going to have to try to feature this new venue in the upcoming wedding expos in September. You know, because we have wedding expo in Tacoma, Bellevue, Linwood, and even Bellingham, for goodness sakes. Karen, it's been a pleasure to have you on our show. We got to get you back on because I just love your conversation. It's what we talk about every single week here on Viva ENT. We talk about rock and roll. We talk the rock legends. And please do us a favor and come back soon.
Right on. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the conversation as well, and look forward to seeing you perform at the Edgewater August 9th.
I'll be there, and I'm very happy to do so. Thank you so much, Karen.
Right on. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Viva ENT. I'm here with my producer, Eric C.C. Ryder. Eric, tell me what's going on.
Well, we've got just a couple minutes left in the show. It goes by so fast.
I know. It's incredible, but it's so fun.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, sir.
Do you know who's going to be on next week?
You know, actually, Nino Tempo.
That's right. You mentioned Nino Tempo. He's supposed to be back with us. So that'll be fantastic to have a brand new interview from him.
You know, Eric, I gotta confide in you in this one. I talked to Nino today on the phone.
Oh, yeah?
He's really a cool guy. And my idea was to have Nino come on the show and talk about Hal Blaine, because Hal had just passed away.
That's right.
In the last couple of weeks, we've done 2 interviews with Hal.
Yeah, both the interviews that he did on the show a couple years back.
That's correct.
And of course, everybody knows Hal Blaine, legendary drummer from the Wrecking Crew.
That's correct.
The #1 session drummer of all time.
40 #1 records he played on, 150 top 10 hits.
Amazing.
So I'm talking to Nino today, and he says, you know, it's funny that you asked me to talk about Hal Blaine, because we weren't really that close. I said, really? And he said, well, we played on, dozens and dozens and dozens of hundreds of sessions, but we just weren't that close of buddies. I said, okay, well, next week when we have you on the show, let's just have you talk about Nino Tempo. And he was cool with that. So Nino will be on the show next week live. So meanwhile, you're listening to Viva ENT. This is Johnny the Capo. Thanks, Karen Zamm, for being on the show. We'll dig you now and see you later, because you are, in no question, a fine Sweet Potato, thank you so much. Good night and goodbye.
It's got to be right. I think about it day and night. I feel like a king, oh yeah. And baby, can't help but stare. Such a rush, baby. Oh, when you touch me, baby. Such a rush, baby. When you love me, baby.
This is Johnny the Gangster with Viva Productions, King of Entertainment, one-stop shop for all your entertainment needs. We have DJ service for weddings, corporate, and private events. Thrill your guests with Vegas Nights Casino Party, blackjack, craps, roulette, poker, and more. We also have event photography and limousine service. Call Viva Productions 206-542-5733 or find us at viva-productions.com. A little less conversation, a little more action, you got it. Call Johnny the Gangster. I'll make you a deal you can't refuse.
Life's a celebration. Grand Event Rentals makes your event their top priority. They are your full-service, special event, and party rental provider, supplying everything you need from start to finish. Their professional sales team and event staff work with you to create your dream event. With every event, Grand Event Rentals customers' needs are the most important. Whether you're planning an intimate outdoor wedding or an elaborate black tie gala, the Grand Event Rentals specialists make great pride in providing our event planning experience to help create an unforgettable event. Please go and visit the Bellevue showroom, Grand Event Rentals, or make a one-on-one appointment. Talk to them. They're trained, they're knowledgeable, they're event specialists, and they are going to take you through step-by-step everything that you need to make your day a success. Call Grand Event Rentals. Their number's 425-462-7368, or go to grandeventrentalslaw.com. Brides, do you want your big day to be stress-free, perfect, and stay within your budget? Well, Brides Club has all the inside information to make your dream a reality. Go to bridesclub.com. That's bridesclub.com. See upcoming bridal shows and events, view wedding vendors and special offers. And don't miss The Spotlight, the premier online wedding magazine with valuable articles you can't afford to miss. Brides Club helps make your wedding stress-free and perfect. Go to bridesclub.com. Check out bridesclub.com. Attention business owners. Experience a new world of business with barter. The Saturn Barter Company, located in Tacoma, is one of the most beneficial business decisions you can make. Using Saturn Barter, you are able to sell your products or services to other members of the exchange. You can then use that credit you've built up from your sales to purchase the products or services you or your company needs from other companies within Saturn Barter, all without the use of cash. Contact and join Saturn Barter Club today, 253-212-9930, or online at saturnbarter.com at saturnbarter.com at saturnbarter.com at